Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this plastic 28mm scale M4A3 Sherman by Rubicon Models. In the interest of disclosure, this model was sent to me by Rubicon Models for the purpose of making this video. There were no other conditions, and I will be treating this kit just the same as if I'd paid for it with my own money. The back of the box has a few paragraphs of information about the Sherman, an image of the tank with suggested Vallejo colours, and a picture of the included decal sheet. Inside the box we find the ever excellent assembly instructions. You should certainly pay attention to these. There are also 3 sprues, all of which are very neatly moulded, almost entirely free of errors, and have a minimum of mould lines. Sprue A has the upper and lower hull parts and the track sets. Sprue B is where you will find the inner bogies for the track sets, parts for the bigger 76mm turret, and a few other bits and pieces. Sprue C has the other turret top, all the guns, and more bits and pieces. The decal sheet might be a little bit hard to see owing to all the white, but they do look pretty good. There's a nice variety of markings including a couple of names. These are for both tanks and half tracks. The instructions do say to start with the turrets, but I started with the tracks and hull because I'm a rebel. The tracks look pretty good. There is a little bit of a mould line, but that's easily removed. They're a fair representation of Sherman tracks. Not perfect, but they're good. The sides of the tracks look great. To assemble the track sets, we need to add the inner bogie parts. You can see that one of the bogie parts has a flat spot at a different angle. This goes towards the rear of the tank. You simply glue them into place. They fit nice and easily. You can see that the rear wheel is angled such that it matches the slope of the track. I think they look quite nice. Next we glue the drive sprocket into place. The assembled track sets can then be glued to the appropriate lower hull pieces. But first, this part must be attached. This part holds the idler wheel. I almost forgot to attach it. Pay attention to the instructions, I say. Then attach the tracks. The pins for the drive sprocket and idler wheel, as well as the recesses for the bogies, ensure that the parts will go perfectly into place. It is a bit of a tight fit. I found that I had to use a little bit of force to get it into place. Nothing too serious though. I think it looks quite good. Next, the lower hull sections can be glued together, helpfully guided by these tube pieces that slot together. I quite like that the towing hitch was moulded onto one of the lower hull parts, as opposed to being a single tiny piece. Also, the slight gap in the hull parts being used as the gap in the doors is clever. Next, I attach the upper hull. This part pretty much just slots right onto the lower hull. Really nice and easy. Then comes the transmission casing, which fills that big gap in the front of the hull. It was a slightly tight fit, but that's not a bad thing. Now we can get to adding some details to the hull. I start at the rear, gluing on these spare track link holders, or at least that's what I think they are. I then add this stowage shelf. It is unfortunate that no stowage is supplied to go with it. Also, mine had a minor error in that the bar here didn't get completely filled with plastic in the mold, resulting in this gap. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal. It could be covered with some stowage like a tarp or a camo net or something. Finally, this exhaust vent, I think, is glued into place and we can move to the front of the hull. I attached the travel lock for the gun. You can kind of see that I accidentally clipped a bit of the part off because I'm a numpty, but it still goes on and looks right. I then attached the whole machine gun. It would have been a little bit less fiddly to use tweezers for this, but it can be done even with my fat fingers. I then attached this. I'm not entirely sure if it's a light or a siren or a horn or something, but on it goes. And then I use probably way too much glue on these, which I am sure are lights. And that's the hull completed. There is of course an optional hedgerow cutter included. I've opted to leave it off, but it does look cool. Now to begin work on the turrets. This kit can be used to make one of 2 turrets. Unfortunately, you can't make both with the parts included. This is a bit of a shortcoming, but I think this was one of Rubicon's first kits, and it seems they've moved away from this and started including enough parts for multiple turrets in more recent kits. One of the things required for both turrets is this hatch, so I begin by assembling it like so. The other part is this ring that goes on the underside of the turret and allows it to lock into the hull. I've seen others take care of this problem with magnets and sheets of plastic, but I figured I would try something a little bit different. I'm going to make a silicon mold of the hatch, and while I'm at it, I might as well do the turret bottom. To make the mold, I cut down a disposable shot glass and used plasticine to secure the hatch in the middle. For the turret ring, I did similar, except I secured it to a plastic lid with blue tack and used plasticine to make a ring around it. Very quick and basic stuff. I then mix up some pinky sil. This is a 2-part silicon for making molds. Mix 2 equal parts thoroughly. I use disposable shot glasses and a larger disposable cup for this. It can be a bit messy, so put some paper down if for some reason you work on a nice surface. This should be mixed thoroughly, but don't spend too long mixing it because it sets pretty quickly. I then slowly and carefully pour the silicon into the 2 molds I prepared earlier. Leave it to cure for a while. I'm not sure of the exact time needed, I went and did other things anyway. Then remove the original parts from the silicon and you've got two nice molds into which casting resin can be poured. This is another two-part product called Easy Cast, very fast cure polyurethane resin. Mix both parts together. You should definitely avoid getting this on your skin. If you do, like I did, wipe it off right away. This stuff gets hot and you can easily burn yourself. Then simply pour it into the silicon molds. Just for fun, I pointed my camera at it while it's set, because it looks kind of cool. This is sped up 1500%. As you can see, it sets to be white. I am sure there are dyes you can add to make it different colours. After a few hours, I got around to removing this from the molds. It does have a little bit of flashing, but it's pretty easy to remove. The turret bottom turned out alright. It doesn't have to be perfect, it won't be visible after all. The hatch also turned out pretty good. This worked out much better than using press molds and green stuff, though it is a more expensive method. If you have the silicon and resin laying around for other projects, it might be worth it. Now we can build both turrets. I start by assembling the cast turret. I'm going to give this the 105mm gun, so I cleaned the mold lines off of that part. They were pretty minor and easy to remove. I then drill out the end of the barrel, being very careful to get the hole in the centre. I then expand the hole a little bit with my knife. I then glue the gun into the appropriate mantlet. Make sure to press it all the way in. If you really wanted, you could magnetise the two gun choices for this turret, but I decided to go with the 105mm gun only. Next, I glue the back portion of the gun mantlet onto the front of the turret. To attach the gun, there is this one piece of plastic that goes on the inside, but I think this is mostly important if you want the gun to be able to elevate and depress. There is only one of these back pieces, but I've decided to glue both of my guns into place, so I omitted it from both turrets and simply glue the gun and outer mantlet onto the inner mantlet. I then glue the turret bottom into place. This is the turret that I would have chosen to build if I couldn't make extra parts for both turrets, so I used the original pieces for it. I glue the already assembled commander's hatch into place, then the lower part of the turret rear, and then the shell ejection hatch. I'm not entirely sure why that is a separate piece. I assume there is some kind of sprue design or mold making reason for it. I might have to fill the gaps on this a little bit before painting. One final part for this turret is the pintle mounted machine gun. If you really want to, you could cast a second one of these, but I didn't feel like it, so I glued its ammo box on and attached it to the 105mm turret. The other turret will just have to do without. The 76mm turret goes together much the same as the other turret, just the parts obviously look different. To attach the resin turret bottom and hatch, I use super glue. I glue the parts of the commander's hatch together, and then glue that into place. And then at this point, I realised I had forgotten about the shell ejection hatch. This one doesn't just slot into place like on the other turret, so what I did was trim it down a bit so it would just slot in. Also, I'm being really stupid with the knife here, using my thumbnail to stop it. I test fit it, and it turned out that this caused the part to fall into the turret. Time for some MacGyver modelling. I cut into the thin layer of flash on the turret bottom, and then bent a paperclip such that it would go into the bottom of the turret and then poke out of where the ejection hatch will go. I then glue the hatch into place. It goes into the turret a little bit, and I use the paperclip to push it back out. Kind of dodgy, but hey, it worked. This area of the turret does look kind of rough. I'm definitely going to have to see to this with some green stuff before I paint the model. Here I've turned the light down so we can see how the resin hatch looks on the turret. Not too bad, I think. That is the Rubicon M4A3 Sherman completed. I'm pretty happy with this kit. Despite the extra effort needed to be able to use both turrets, it went together fairly quickly and very easily, and it looks rather good. I do have a resin Sherman by Warlord around here somewhere, but I think this model looks much better. They are entirely different hulls though, so I didn't bother comparing them side by side. There are a couple of flaws, but I think they're rather minor. The 76mm turret does look a little bit worse than the 105, but that's only because there are gaps which result from my shoddy workmanship, I think, and it will be much improved with some green stuff, so it's not such a big deal. I think this model would be greatly improved with some stowage on the rear shelfy thing and on the engine deck. I'm going to have a look to see if I can find something suitable. This Sherman will look rather nice when I get it all painted up, which presents me with a small dilemma. Shermans can be fielded by the US, British, or Soviet forces, so I could paint this tank for any one of those. Now I don't think the Soviets had Shermans armed with the 105 gun, but I think the Brits might have. I am a little bit less interested in building a US army, but I do have the Assault on Normandy bolt action box set, so I was going to put together a small US force at some point, so maybe I will paint this as an American tank, maybe British, maybe some kind of combination using different turret markings for each turret. Decisions. Either way, I won't be painting this vehicle for a while, so I can put off the decision making until later. I would like to say a big thank you to Jamie at Rubicon for sending me this kit. It's much appreciated. If I feel a need for more Shermans, I will certainly pick up more of these Rubicon ones. I hope this video has been interesting or helpful for you. If you liked it, you can always click like or even subscribe. As always, I'd love to see your comments in the comment section below on Facebook or Twitter. I may address your comments either in the comments section below or in a future episode of Ask a Herbert Erpaderp if I feel it warrants such. Or maybe both. Thanks for watching. Farewell.